Hey there. Well, I had a really interesting experience last night in our prayer meeting because I realized during the prayer meeting that I may very well be praying for you. If you have known me in this life, or possibly in another life, um, it's quite possible that when I pray, I am doing the prayer that whatever the prayer happens to be that I'm doing, and I could be, for example, just letting go of wanting to make money. That's a prayer, and you want to attract money, let go of wanting it. That's how there's so many things out about attracting money and wealth, and it's really simple. You know, just let go of wanting it because you are naturally attracting it. That's that's normal. That's what it is to be normal, to attract money. And to be abnormal is to repel money. And to be abnormal is can also be neutral. And I notice people who really don't care about money. You ever notice this? They attract money and they still don't care about it. They may use it, but they really it's not the main thing for them. Then there's all these people who tend to care passionately and they attract fortunes. And when you when you dig into them, you find out that actually, no matter what the way they have presented it, they really have other things they're more deeply interested in. The money just comes because of that. How did I get on this money thing? It's just anyway. What I was trying to say is that I realized that I pray for people all the time because there's a prayer that we say in the prayer meeting and we get a signal on it, which is I am saying these prayers for my friends, loved ones, friends, loved ones, allies, associates, soulmates, people I care about. So that is probably true of you too when you pray. You probably do some form of praying. See, this is my praying. This is how I pray, like this. That's prayer. What I'm doing is I'm accessing God with my inner vision, and God is moving my finger. Not right that second, because I was just showing what it looks like. But when I get a spontaneous finger movement, that's God doing that. Now, this morning, for whatever reason, I was meditating. I could call it it doesn't look like meditating. You know how people sit and they really try to meditate, or they just sit someplace and they say a mantra or something, and I don't do any of that. uh, to me, everything is meditation. I've turned emptying the dishwasher into a into a Zen meditation. I haven't gotten that far with stacking it yet, but emptying it is a snap for me. It just really the meditative state just comes. Uh, the and I was thinking about suffering that I have caused for other people and animals in various ways. And I went into that, you know, like I don't suffer when I experience what I've done to other people. It doesn't. See, a lot of people are really reluctant to experience what they've done to others because they immediately start blaming themselves and feeling bad, and their whole level of consciousness drops down around around their knees, and they're just, oh God, I don't want to think about. I should not be thinking about this. I'm making myself sick, which is not strictly speaking true. It's not the content that is making you sick. It's all the stuff you put on top of that, and because you see, facing what I have done to other people is all it really is just facing reality. It's just another way of facing reality. You know, there's a hedge fund manager I like, uh, uh, Ray Dalio, who wrote a book about his principles. And some of his most basic principles, one of them is that you have to face reality at all times. Certainly, to trade stock, you have to face reality. That is a big problem that causes people to lose money. Most people lose money in the stock market if they try to trade. If they buy and hold, a lot of times their portfolio grows over years and years and years. Because the economy's done better and better. We've invented wonderful things. One of those is charge cards. The miracle of charge cards, you can just stick a piece of plastic. You don't have to part with any money. You can just stick a piece of plastic in the machine, and then, out comes the receipt. It's a pleasure to just watch it happen. Oh God. Anyway, that is one thing that he knows, is that you have to face reality. And he had by far the biggest hedge fund in the world, from what I read about him someplace. Um, Maybe it was in an interview he did. I've listened to some interviews that he did too, in addition to looking at his book. So, somebody who I admire, but he's also a kindred spirit, because I believe in that. That is my credo: is face reality. Whatever else you do, face reality. You can't go wrong facing reality. But you can go wrong with anything, even the best thing, if you go wrong. And I'll tell you something Meher Baba said, who was my master, and he said that 95% of all human suffering is self-inflicted. I think he was probably hinting at 100%, but he didn't want people to think he was nuts. He wanted them to know he was God, so he didn't go like all the way out there. He was careful in his communication. He took into account his listeners and the state of consciousness they were in. You tell somebody, you're causing all your suffering, and the guy's going to say, well, I'm out of here. You're not God. How could you be God and say something that stupid? Oh boy. So what I was doing was squarely facing these things, that I have done, and my failure. And then I started, my thought expanded, and I started to compare that to the suffering that is actually happening in the world, that does not, at least it doesn't seem like I'm directly related to it. Like, for example, in China a couple hundred years ago, it was quite a common occurrence for these guys to come along and herd a bunch of peasants into somewhere, and line them up, and they'd bring out this guy with a sword, and he'd chop all their heads off. Never told them a single thing about why this was happening. And so, of course, their families were wailing with grief and suffering. It was a real attack on the survivors of these people, their children, and so on. It just was this, and human beings have been attacking each other in these really nasty ways for so long, and you can see it happening around you now in more subtle forms, like a guy goes with a woman for 5 years and then he breaks up with her, and it just goes on and on like that, like some defective guy, and all he did was make somebody else responsible for his defect. There's just, and that's what people do. They make other people responsible for their defects and their immune dysfunctions and their suffering. Like, how often have you found yourself blaming somebody else because you're suffering? When your suffering can be cured like that. For example, let's say somebody says something to you and you start traumatizing yourself. Trauma is something you do to yourself and other people, or other people. Sometimes you don't do it to yourself, you do it to somebody else. And you can just test it. Am I in trauma? Yes. Am I blaming him? That's doing something to somebody. Okay. Yes. So, okay, and then you can answer, did I cure it? Well, yes, I did. Possibly you'll get, if you see, the thing is, I think a lot of people also make too much of their trauma. Like, it can't possibly be cured. It's so important. Well, you know what? It's not important. You were right the first time when you decided that you didn't want to mess with it at all, because it's just not important. And the thing is, it's important enough to cure, but it is not important enough to get enmeshed in. There isn't anything important enough to get enmeshed in, because reality isn't real. It's an illusion. It's Maya. This is all Maya. And right from where I'm standing here, it's pretty nice. There's birds and trees and sunlight. And this is a little spot I like, one of my little spots in the world. That's what I do. I never like anywhere I am, so I find a little spot that I like. I don't know if I've ever liked any house I ever lived in. I think the one I've got now is probably the one I like the best of all of them. Anyway, so Buddha said to be born is to suffer. And while there is a deep and profound truth in that, and the truth being that enmeshment in Maya, like while we are trapped in this illusion, there is probably always a certain amount of suffering, because you don't know who you really are, which is somebody who is not trapped in illusion. namely God. You're God. And, the illusion is that you're not.